Friday, July 23rd, 2021. And no, I apologize in advance. Ezra Levant is not here. He usually is, but the hardest working man in show business is out of the province on a special assignment. And my normal fill-in co-host, that would be Sheila Gunreed, aka the She-Devil with a Sword. She is also on assignment. So I am very happy to have, to my left, high energy, Andrew Says. How you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing well, David. Thank you very much. Of course, we're here to take your comments, questions, concerns by form of hyper chats on Odyssey. If you guys are watching on Odyssey, or if you're not, head over there to ask us your questions or give us your comments that we'll read aloud. We'll go over some of the nations and perhaps continents' biggest stories today, as well as our latest Rebel news story. David, the Menzoid, what's the first thing you want to talk about today?
You know, I got to tell you, it wasn't on the list.
Uh-oh.
But I'm driving into headquarters, and I hear that the Cleveland Indians have changed their nickname for next season going forward. And without getting into the Indians debate and native nicknames and logos, such as, I think the Washington Redskins are still going to be known this season as the Washington Football Team.
Accurate.
I don't know what's taken them so long, but I couldn't help but notice the nickname is the new nickname, that is, Andrew, the Guardians. And first of all, how do you visually represent that on a logo? And this seems to be something that is really a Cleveland thing. Their football team, the nickname is the Browns, which was actually named after the person who founded the team. But you're in a real problem area, because how do you visually represent a logo that's brown? You can't even use the color on the helmet, because that's a rule. The helmet can't be the same color as the football to avoid, a ref making the wrong call. And, and I mean, their basketball team, the Cavaliers. Who in blue hell, folks, would name a male basketball team the Cavaliers? It just sounds so effeminate to me. And now we have the Guardians. And then the more I thought about this, Andrew, the more Guardians made sense. And I'll tell you why. It's kind of like when you said, oh, well, they'll just have a knight as a Guardian. Well, then you're ripping off the Las Vegas hockey team. I think Guardian is bang on for the day and age we live in, because it's like, what it says to me is parental guardian. It's like a guardian of content, a guardian that looks at what we say, what we do, what we think, what we write. It is so in tune, I think, with cancel culture that, here are a bunch of guardians in Cleveland, of all places, monitoring correct speak. And the idea that they got rid of a logo that is more than a century old, and a nickname that's more than a century old, I guess it shows that they're practicing what they preach. But what are your thoughts on that?
They should have went with a bird or something. There's a lot of birds in the major leagues. You got the Orioles, the Cardinals, the Blue Jays. Why not the Sparrows?
Yeah, Sparrows.
They could have went with something rock and roll themed. Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there. The Cleveland LeBron Jameses, maybe. Just get a logo of LeBron, since they worship him there. I don't know. It's stupid. It's one of those situations where nobody asked for it except for people who don't care about baseball. Just like, what are the Edmonton Eskimos called now?
Oh, the Elk Hounds or the Elk Swine?
Edmonton Elk or something. Shout out to a couple of the Edmonton Eskimos who are actually, really smart guys. I watch a lot of their stuff that they post online, and they say some real woke stuff, and not in the sarcastic sense, even though I did quotations. I don't know, David. I think it's one of these things that they're going to regret. But it's probably going to be forgotten in a year or two. I mean, sports fans will remember it, but everybody else is just going to start calling them that. Washington Football Team, I don't know how they've kept it the same for this long. It's really stupid. I don't know how you're supposed to build a brand or sell merchandise or get new fans.
Yeah.
If most of the times when kids are picking teams, and it's not just a legacy thing where, like, my father's a big Leafs fan, which isn't what happened with me because my dad's a Canadiens fan. They go with whatever they think is the coolest logo, the coolest uniform, whoever sounds the coolest. The football team and the Guardians, and the Elks, these aren't cool names. They're not cool logos. you got to do something creative. Like Seattle's team is the Kraken. That's going to get at least some people to be like, oh, this is interesting. But when you go down this road of let's get the most generic thing we can to not offend people, it's insane. And somebody's done a video, and I have it in one of my old episodes of my show with a guy named Vince Dow, a young guy. He goes through all the college sports teams in the United States that have logos that would be offensive to white people. And there's actually hundreds of them. I mean, you could go down the road of the Boston Celtics being offensive if you want to. And there's
Notre
so many
Dame Fighting Irish.
Fighting
right?
Irish, Texas Rangers. So there's so many things that could be offensive to other people, but they just choose not to. And the reason why this happens is because it's usually white people acting on other people's behalf to be offended on their behalf. And it's a sad situation, David Menzies.
And by the way, you are 100% right in that assessment, because if there are any woke people tuned in right now and they're going, oh, this is
Sure
rich, two white heterosexual males talking about what is and isn't offensive to natives. Well, I can tell you, back in 2016, the Washington Post, no less, and I'm sure they were shocked by the results of this poll, they had an exclusive poll to Native Americans about the team name and logo, Washington Redskins. And I am absolutely sure, Andrew, to their shock and dismay, more than 90% said they had no problem. In fact, they liked it. We actually did an assignment where we went down to downtown Toronto and talked to natives, and they loved it. They thought it was empowering. So it begs the question, doesn't it? Who is offensive? When you're asking natives who have the most skin in the game about native nicknames and logos for sports teams, and more than 9 out of 10 say, no, this isn't bad. In fact, it's good. In fact, I wear this merchandise. I go back to, when I started my career, such as it is, in northern Alberta in the 1980s. I was in a part of the real estate in Canada, Andrew, where there was something like, in the town I was in, St. Paul, it was a short drive to, I believe, 5 Indian reserves. And in the 1980s, in northern Alberta, at the peak of Gretzky mania, right, you would think that the Edmonton Oilers jersey would be the most prevalent. I can tell you on the reserves, I was with a pickup team and we would play native teams, almost every single one wearing the sweater of the Chicago Blackhawks. So these are natives with their own money buying potentially offensive sweaters and logos. And by the way, the Chicago Blackhawks, I have no doubt whatsoever that this, which is easily one of the most beautiful hockey jerseys ever created in the history of shinny, that will be next on the cancel culture list. You watch, in our lifetime, that's going to be a different name and nickname. But what I'm getting at is, who are we bending the knee to? White social justice warriors that are being offended on behalf of the natives who aren't? This is madness, Andrew.
Well, regarding the Chicago Blackhawks, so many native teams have taken that logo, as many amateur teams do.
Yeah.
In Whitby, Ontario, Canada, the Iroquois team, their lacrosse and their hockey teams use pretty much a repurposed version of that logo, and it happens all the time with lacrosse teams. And last thing I'll say on this is the Edmonton Eskimos, same deal as the Washington Redskins, where the Edmonton Eskimos actually came up with that name with the help of a native tribe, who they also do yearly benefits with. They visit with the people on the reserve all the time, every season. So they're not pleasing anyone by just changing their name. And even though they had an overwhelming support to keep the name, they still decided, Sally Ann in public relations department said, no, this is offensive, David, we have to change it.
Yeah, and one last thing about the Edmonton Eskimos. I remember when they got the names down to the final 7, which all had to begin with the letter E because they wanted to keep the double E logo.
Because they can't afford to change it.
No, but that is an iconic logo. I applaud that. If you had a gun to my head and said, you must change this nickname, you can no longer use Eskimos. It has to be another name with an E. And I was looking at the name Elks, Eclipse. Who in blue hell would name a sports franchise an Eclipse?
Too.
But here's the thing. What didn't make the final 7, a word that begins with the letter E, that is completely in touch with the culture of Alberta, is energy. Wouldn't that be, what a
Yes.
great name for a sports franchise, the Edmonton Energy. But I know what's happening in the back door, in the
Energy is
boardrooms.
also evil.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What about the Greta Thunberg element? They might not like this idea of a fossil fuel connection.
The Oilers are going to have to change too.
Oh yeah. Well, look, when Houston went back into the NFL, they had a great nickname too. Also, the Oilers, a fantastic logo, I thought, an oil derrick, and they became the Houston Texans. Isn't that redundant?
Well, it's because it's a different franchise, David Menzies.
No,
the Houston Oilers moved to Tennessee to become the Tennessee Titans. I would expect David Menzies to know this football lore.
Listen, when Winnipeg rejoined the NHL, it went back to the Jets. And by the way, the owners wanted a different nickname, and Manitobans rose up in anger and said, "No, you're staying with the Jets," and they did the right thing. They
Rise up, Manitoba. Manitoba
Yeah.
strong. Our next segment is brought to you by the United Nations.
they got trucks in Toronto now. Right?
Yes, they have moved into our parking lot. They now own us. Annemie Paul is the de facto, I guess I can use the term, leader of the Green Party. She won the leadership race, did she not? And now we've... are those documents public yet that we've discovered? Can we mention those?
Well, I know our lawyers sent a process server yesterday to the court, because what is spectacular, folks, is that Annemie Paul, who just launched yesterday her official election kickoff, in the periphery, there is turmoil galore. The Green Party of Canada and the Green Party Fund of Canada, right? They have launched legal action. Basically, the gist of it is when there was the specter of a leadership review that was quashed, it shouldn't have been. They should have been reviewed. And basically, what is Annemie Paul's sin? Well, she is pro-Israel. And when you have a party full of progressives, it is de rigueur to denounce Israel, to embrace the likes of Hamas. And we know this, don't we, Andrew? Because remember back in 2015, Elizabeth May, the former leader of the Green Party, and someone who I think is still strongly connected to the Green Party in terms of string pulling and puppet mastering, she was at that incredible event. I think it was the Ottawa Press Gallery in Ottawa, where she prayed. You know what? I think it would be
allegedly
in her favor. No, I think she should cling to that. I was drunk as a skunk. I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know what I was doing. But she was singing the praises of Omar Khadr, our homegrown Islamist terrorist and now a multimillionaire thanks to the Trudeau Liberals. I don't know if we have that clip, if Mr. Producer finds it. So if you are embracing Omar Khadr, you kind of get an idea where the Greens are on Mideast policy, don't you?
Well, it's because she is Jewish, I would imagine. But people are going to, of course, say...
That's Annemie Paul, not Elizabeth May.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now people are going to say, why are you guys carrying water for the Green Party? Because it's silly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're suing their own leader because they don't like who won. They don't like what she's standing for. And I imagine this Green Party fund comes from their global fund, as they are quite literally a globalist party, hence why all Green Party parties across the entire world use the same logo and they use the same platform. It's pretty much NDP, but with pretending they care more about the environment. It might as well be the same party. But whereas the NDP would just be localized in Canada and perhaps wherever jag meat is not banned from, the Green Party, they collect funds, they collect organizational, not representation, but connections. It's basically just a global party, literal globalists who say, let's try to run here, let's try to run there, and they do their best. And I'd imagine their global partners are not a fan of Annemie Paul being a fan of, her own heritage, I guess.
Yeah, well, Andrew, that's so true. And I mean, they were fans prior to May when we had that big eruption with Israel and Hamas, and she issued a statement about, I don't want to misquote it, but it was I thought, so innocuous. Let's get back to discussing the issues. And evidently, because she didn't outright condemn Israel,
That's right.
that was her sin. In fact, one Green Party member crossed the floor to the Liberals. And I would argue that I think maybe a lot of the Green Party membership didn't even realize when they voted for her that she was Jewish. I mean, in terms of the identity politics poker game, I mean, she's got, the ace and the king in her behalf. She's female and she's black, right? And that should neither be here nor there, but we know that's not true. Mm-hmm. That's how politics works. But when it was revealed that she was Jewish and pro-Israel, whoa. Then you had defections. Then you had turmoil about a leadership review, now a lawsuit. And I've never seen anything like this. A party going into an election, Andrew, where the party's own leader is the subject of a lawsuit to be ousted by her own party. Can you ever remember this?
If she does, in fact, get to hold her position as the leader, I think this helps her. I think this will get her NDP voters. But the thing about the NDP and the Green Party is, and I do lump them in on purpose, is that especially for the Green Party, you're going to have a bunch of people who probably used to care about the environment a lot, of what maybe the Green Party was 20 years ago. And just as we are literally the party to try to push environmental policy. Now, obviously, it's different. I don't think that a lot of their party members, and maybe this is me being too mean, know a lot about what's going on. They see Green Party, they think it's good. And I don't think that they're going to allow any differentiating opinions in this, because that's just not how it works when you get into these far or left groups. It's just, we have these set of things. You're not supposed to be offensive to anyone, and disagreeing with Palestine as an oppressed state is just one of these things you're not allowed to say. Just like as if she was to tweet out there are only two genders, there'd be even more outrage.
Gracious. And the other thing, I'm glad you brought the NDP up, because when we look at the equation of the electoral map, the 338 seats, and why the Liberals tend to do so well let's consider this. This is Toronto Centre, folks, which used to be the riding of the disgraced ex-finance minister Bill Morneau. And here's the thing. I can easily see support for Annamie Paul and the NDP, and guess who comes right up the middle? It's the Liberal candidate, another riding won by the Justin Trudeau Liberals.
Is it this the Marcy Ian riding?
Yes.
So she's probably going to retain, is my guess.
I would imagine, and unless you had some meeting of the minds between Green and NDP voters to strategically vote for one party or the other, but I don't see that happening. And again, this will be, I think, a riding won by a Liberal candidate going right up the middle.
I mean, not that Jagmeet can ever win, but I would be so interested to see how this sort of stuff would play out if we started asking Jagmeet these questions. You ask Annamie Paul her support of Israel versus Palestine. She tells you Israel. There's your big controversy. You start asking Jagmeet about tough questions about religion, who he sides on in Islam versus Sikhism.
How about Khalistan?
All these questions about his religion. Yep. NDP is a party of voters who hate religion. I'm sorry to tell you. They're not and maybe they don't hate religion, maybe they want to respect all people, but when it comes down to the beliefs of something like Sikhism, young voters who are 18 to 25, who are very left, are not going to be going to bat for anyone's religious freedoms, as we've seen in the last year. Now, it may be different because they might see it as an oppressed a group. However, Sikhs are not going to be NDP voters, and NDP voters are not going to be Sikhs. That's just going to be the reality of it. I don't see how those two belief systems can mix at all, especially when you take from the fact that a common NDP voter is going to be pro-Palestine. A person who's a religious Sikh is not going to be pro-Palestine. That's just historically and literally not how it's going to be. So I would like to see how things would go if Jagmeet actually had to start answering questions about this stuff, is if his party actually started to know his true belief system and his actual opinions on global conflicts and religious doctrine in that sense, because all we ever get from Jagmeet is tax more, child grants, days off, we need more sick days, and everything's offensive and racist, and I'm going to cry about it.
But you know what? I would dispute that the likes of Jagmeet Singh have nothing to do with religion or hate religion, because we know he has a soft spot in his heart for the idea of a Sikh republic within India called Khalistan, and there are Sikhs in Canada that do believe in this. I think this is a deader issue in India than it is in Canada, believe it or not. And let's not forget, Andrew, the biggest act of Canadian terrorism goes back to the 1980s, the Air India bombing, and this was what it was all about, right? So when you look at Jagmeet Singh, when he's brought on the carpet to talk about an independent Sikh republic, Khalistan, he does tap dancing that would make Fred Astaire blush, okay? Because he can't be seen as pro-terrorism or pro-extremism, and yet he can't go against the wishes of much of his base, I'm sorry to say, which are pro-Khalistan Sikhs.
Well, I don't doubt for a second, I don't know if that's what you're alluding to, that Jagmeet doesn't believe these things. Him and his brother both seem to be religious Sikhs. I wouldn't doubt that for a second. I don't necessarily care about what his beliefs actually are. I just think that if he's Sikh, I don't think the massive NDP voters would support the religious views that a Sikh might have or pertain to have, especially in relations to things like Palestine, Islam, transgenderism, stuff like that. Now, Justin, do we...
So complicated,
Exactly.
Isn't it?
It's hard when you're lying all the time. Justin, do we have that clip the Menzoid mentioned? Good to go. All right, let's see it.
All right.
He's got 1 second now.
Oh, he's got
all
one
of a sudden,
second.
from one moment, he's the greatest producer ever. He's found the clip. The next moment, he wants...
Justin will always be the greatest producer ever. I mean, we began the discussion with baseball. Do you know I call Justin Mr. Triple? I'll leave it up to the audience to decide if that's because he hits a record number of triples or he always bats into a triple play.
That would be exciting. Triple play is an exciting play no matter what.
It sure is.
Well, let's go
ahead. The batter.
Let's move on to...
Oh, you know what? I think, do you have it, Justin? Okay, Here's Elizabeth May in a clip that will never get tired. Check it out.
Do you guys ever wake up with old theme songs from former black and white TV shows that you never thought your kids would ever see, and they're running through your head? Like every now and then I wake up thinking about, Lisa, you've got to wait. Lisa, I wake up thinking about a horse is a horse, of course, of course. This morning I wake up thinking this. Why am I thinking this? Do you guys wonder? Liz, hang on.
We wonder why you're thinking that too, but
Wait, you know what? Do you guys remember the theme song? Welcome back. Who knew Cotter was spelled K-H-A-D-R? Welcome back, Omar Cotter. It matters to say it. Welcome back, Omar Cotter. You're home. Doesn't it strike you as unusual? I didn't use up my time.
no, you didn't. There's a lot unusual about your speech, Liz, but we're going to take off.
Omar Cotter, you got more class than the whole fucking cabinet. Thank you.
What did the other woman say when she spoke into the mic?
That was Lisa Raitt doing heroic work in preventing Elizabeth May from really going down the sewer. You know, folks, first of all, how disgusting, both the sentiment and the language. Secondly, how did we ever know that Elizabeth May was so ahead of the curve in terms of the Justin Trudeau Liberals that gave our homegrown Islamist terrorist a $10.5 million check for hurting his feelings? But I'm not going to quote her verbatim, but Omar Cotter has more effing class than the entire Harper cabinet. Let me
write that one down.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling. This is a woman who thinks that a terrorist who killed an American ally and partially blinded another one has class. The guy should be locked up for the rest of his miserable life. And secondly, in 2019, I got to ask questions to Elizabeth May at the press conference after the federal leadership debate in Ottawa. And this is what I brought up to her. And I thought she had an easy out, Andrew. I thought she could have said, which I think is quite clear, that, you know what, I was drunk as a skunk. I didn't know what I was saying. Then I'd have forgiveness. But no, she doubled down. She said, the press gallery dinner, it's all about comedy, it's all about making jokes. And my follow-up question is the family of Mr. Spear, are they laughing about this? The person whose life was taken by this scumbag. So this is the leader of the Green Party up until recently, and who I think is still pulling the strings. She is a disgrace. She is vulgar. She's a hypocrite, i.e., remember Victoria Day 2 years ago, drove in BC, drove in a Victoria Day parade in a Dodge Viper, which I think manufactures 640 horsepower. Not exactly a plug-in Toyota Prius. So I have nothing but contempt for this vile woman based on those statements. She's never apologized for them. Maybe
the Green Party would have done a better job of keeping track of the electrical car outlets that Sheila Gunn-Reid did a story on recently. How the federal, if you guys didn't hear, Justin, can we just pull up that story quickly? We'll talk about it for 2 minutes. Sheila has documents that showed the federal government forgot where they placed all their electrical car charging centers across the entire country, and they've had to hire for some reason, they hired an American company to try to locate all of their plug-in stations. I don't know what to call charging stations, I guess.
How is this possible?
I don't know. People are pointing out that there's actually apps that you can download that say, here's the closest.
That's right.
Which makes sense, of course.
Yep.
People with electric vehicles need to know that's an easy service, an easy idea. Should have been on Dragon's Den. Brett Wilson. Shout out Brett Wilson, who won't come on my show anymore.
What happened there? Another lover's quarrel?
No, for some reason he thought that I wanted him to debate Adam Skelly on the show. And I was like, no, I just want you to come on the show, Brett Wilson. And he hasn't replied. Shout out Brett Wilson. Trudeau government loses track of electric car chargers, pays American company $680,000 to find them.
Oh, what?
Now Sheila has the best,
$680,000.
She's great at finding the best and most hilarious government documents.
Yeah.
So that's always exciting. Go to rebelnews.com to see that. Let's move on to Justin. We can show probably the first 2 minutes of my video about Hasbro toys.
It was a good one.
Hasbro has they make all the big companies' toys: Marvel, Transformers, Power Rangers, all that stuff that David Menzies still plays with and still reads the comics for.
Yeah, but you know what? That sounds like a lot of toxic masculinity.
There is. That's why we need to make sure it's
They don't
only
make Barbie. That's Mattel, right?
You're apparently knee-deep in the toy manufacturing game. Regardless, Project Veritas found a whistleblower for Hasbro toys. He was a packaging engineer, I believe was his title, contracted by them, not directly from them, but so his company he works for is contracted by Hasbro. They made them go through mandatory training where people, part of a company that does they produce books, indoctrinating books for children about BLM and sort of stuff like that, like everything's racist. That's the company. They gave a seminar as such that became mandatory training for these Hasbro employees, where it tells you that 3 months old to 6 months old, your child has racial biases and preferences. A little bit after that, they choose who they want to play with on the playground by race, which I didn't experience as a child at all.
Wait a minute, at 3 months of age?
3 to 6 months old. You'll see it in a second, but 3 to 6 months old is where they first develop their racial biases. And then as they go through the first 5 years of a child's life and tell you how racist they are, by the time they get to 5 years old, they're telling you that it's only the white children that choose their friends based on race. Black and Latinx or Latinx is what they call them. Those children don't have those biases. But
by the way, I don't know one Latino or Latina person.
No, of course
I've
not.
ever met that identifies as Latinx. In fact, they hate that descriptor.
Of course not, because they're Catholic most of the time from Central and South American countries, and they only believe in 2 genders, which is a controversial statement. I know. Everybody hit me up for that one, I guess. But it just seems like they've got 2 people on screen here. You'll see them, and they're giving a revised history lesson of how racist infants and small children are. And then, but once they get to the age of 5, it's just only the white kids once they can start thinking.
Of course.
Justin, can we play maybe the parts where we see the actual clips of this this terrible training video?
By 3 to 6 months, babies are beginning to notice and already express preference by race. There was research that looked at how by 6 months, infants living in a homogeneous or same race neighborhood showed preferences for faces from their own racial groups, whereas infants living in more racially diverse environments did not show that same preference for their own racial group.
Welcome back to Rebel News. Critical race theory is a term and idea that seeks to categorize racial groups as the perpetually oppressed or oppressors, teaching students that they are subjected to these realities as a matter of fact as soon as they're born. Attempts to obfuscate these points are top of mind for talk show hosts these days who insist that the definitions are just wrong.
Theory, right? What I don't think is right is that forcing 8-year-olds in Cupertino, California to deconstruct their racial identities and then rank themselves according to power and privilege. It's intersectionality theory, which was invented by Kimberly Crenshaw.
That's intersectionality. It's a separate thing.
Which is part of critical race theory.
No, it's not, dear.
You had her on your show. You know this.
Yeah, she invented
and
both
here's the bottom
things.
line, Joy.
She invented both things.
What you've done in tonight's segment is exactly...
It's not critical race theory, it's just dividing people by race, they swear. Teaching children to judge each other by race and convincing non-believers that racial inferiority is a belief naturally held by all is very dangerous, of course. And these semantics will undoubtedly play a part in this next story, where toy giant Hasbro, they make toys for Disney, Marvel, and Transformers. They've just been exposed for putting employees through mandatory training that states, as a matter of fact, that infants as early as aged 3 to 6 months are in fact guilty of racism.
By 3 to 6 months, babies are beginning to notice and already express preference by race. There was research that looked at how by 6 months, infants living in a homogeneous or same race neighborhood showed preferences for faces from their own racial groups, whereas infants living in more racially diverse environments did not show that same preference for their own racial group. And this is really important because we see that early exposure to different races is impacting these preferences before babies are even 1 year old. Children as young as 2 are already using race to reason about people's behaviors, and we may see this play out in daycare or on the playground in how kids are starting to choose or exclude playmates and friends.
The man who exposed these videos is David Johnson, a packaging engineer who's contracted by Hasbro. He joins us now. Thanks for coming on, David. How are you?
All right, let's bring it good. Thank you for having me.
David, what was your immediate reaction when you were exposed to these training videos? We're saying children under the age of 1 have racial biases. How did you react to seeing that?
I was pretty blown away. I wasn't unfamiliar with critical race theory or intersectionality for. I've known about their ideology for a few years now, but just to have it so in my face at my place of work was just a huge slap in the face or splash of cold water. As soon as I saw the video, I'm like, I have to let people know about this so that they can understand what's being pushed onto their children.
Was there any discussion amongst fellow employees who...
Andrew, right off the hopper, the woman that was speaking there, Katie Ishizuka, co-founder of something called The Conscious Kid.
Yeah, that's the group that produces like the indoctrinating books. You can go to their website and on the front they just have the examples of their books about everything's racist.
What a perverse name for an organization, The Conscious Kid, because I felt myself becoming unconscious as I listened to the drivel coming out of that dingbat's mouth. But she made mention of the fact that studies show, or the research shows, and here's some homework for you. Get a copy of that research. Get a copy of that study. I'm serious because, a wonderful book, I think it was published in 1990 by Cynthia Crossan, who was an editor-reporter at the Wall Street Journal. It's called Tainted Truth. And it was basically how when a sponsor is doing a study, that by changing the degree, 1/1000th of a degree, you can come out with a very different conclusion than doing an unbiased study or research paper. In other words, you can change the study to come up with the conclusion you wanted it to have. And if that's impossible, well, what you could do to plan B, bury the study and make everybody sign a non-disclosure agreement or else they don't get paid. That is what I think is happening here with research that shows a 3-month-old is developing racial bias And of course, as you said earlier, it's only the white 3-month-old kids. How would you even, the child can't even speak.
Well, I think what's going on there, and of course they don't get questioned on this because they speak, my biggest problem is they speak so matter of fact about it. But when she's saying that a child 3 to 6 months old who grows up in their own, racially homogenized area and has a preference for a certain race of a face, it sounds to me like she's taking a baby prefers the face of their parents who will look like them as their preference. Like, that's literally what happens is babies prefer the face of their own parents, and that's why they cry when somebody else holds them. And then she gets into this whole thing about how only white toddlers care about this, and it's a whole bunch of crap, and she sounds like Catherine McKenna when she speaks, and they don't get challenged at all. And there's a part that we didn't show there that you can see, I think if you watch the full video or go to the website with our website with the video in it, and you'll have it linked to the Project Veritas video where you can see the rest of it. And they talk about how children start to prefer white people, and then after that statement she says, which of course is the privileged group in our society. So she just adds in her own little factoids there that are so obviously true. And David, this is just going to enrage people. It's going to think children that it's okay to hate a certain race. It's going to make another race of children think that they're inferior or inherently pieces of garbage because they have no choice but to be see themselves as hateful.
Well, 100%. I would make the argument that the most unracist demographic, if that is a word indeed, would be children, because they have, my argument, Andrew, is I don't think there is a DNA in any race which makes a person hate another person based on race. I think it is learned through environment. In other words, if you're a child growing up in a household in which, say, the mother and father are racist against any one group, that might rub off on you. And you know what? It might not. You might actually counter that kind of hateful environment, but it has more to do with nurturing the nature, is what I'm saying. Secondly, let's call this for what this is, whether it's critical race theory, whether it's Black Lives Matter. Their basis in ideology is Marxism. And Marxism is always about tearing things down, tearing down the establishment. And it is a sad situation that we're in, that Marxists, I believe, through 50, 60 years of indoctrination into everything from education to the judiciary, to policing, to academia, have infiltrated all these organizations. And that's why Hasbro, the toy company that should just be manufacturing playthings, is instead indoctrinating their workers with this outrageous garbage that is supposedly based on research, but like I said, I want to see that research. I think it's bogus. I don't think it exists. I think it is deeply flawed, and I think it is politically driven. And hopefully, in the years to come, Andrew, we're going to have a backlash to this kind of garbage, because this is causing so much dissension out there and is doing the opposite when it comes to fixing race relations.
Well, the reason I showed that Joy Reid clip, who's super, far left on MSNBC, she's had the person who coined the term critical race theory on, and she's also the same person who invented intersectionality. Yeah. So she didn't completely invent them, but she's one of the people that popularized them and came up with these terms. Critical race theory is like a study and a paper done by this guy in the 70s or 80s, I forget which it was, but she's not the exact inventor, is my point there. But now this argument that Joy Reid and other people are having to counter people's problems with critical race theory is like, oh, that's not the exact definition of what critical race theory is. And that's what she says with that guy in that clip. She says, oh, it's not Marxism, it's just critical race theory, looking at policing and the justice system through the eyes of people who are non-white. And then he says, well, she invented intersectionality, and it's the same thing. She's like, oh no, she invented them separately. They're two separate things. So now they want to play semantics about what critical race theory is, even though it's clearly been it's clearly become this encompassing thing where you're teaching children to divide each other based on race, permanent oppressed and oppressors. We all know what it is, but this is the way that they say. Nobody knows what they're talking about. This guy named Mark Lamont Hill does the same thing, where he said recently that he believes all white people are racist. They say, well, you haven't read the actual original paper of critical race theory, so you saying that it's communist and Marxist and involves intersectionality is wrong because it's actually just meant to be used in law. Like, it's so easy to predict, just like any of these other topics, what exactly they're going to say once you actually have the knowledge of what it is, because they can never get past point one. They think that I've got this one point and nobody else, because that's the people they surround themselves with, nobody else is going to dig any deeper on this. And just like everything else in elections, whatever you want, political ideology you want to point out, if you just go the extra layer deeper, especially with news stories, then you've already defeated 99% of arguments and you can predict all the other ones. It's how people like myself or yourself, when we go out and do streeters and we get crazy answers, we know exactly what their first response is going to be to a question because they all have the same answer because they read something on Reddit or somebody shared a Facebook post with them that is the truth. Or now this video, the real reason why enemy Paul is standing up for Israel and supporting their genocide, something like that.
Or they are afraid of speaking what they really feel because we live in a day and age of cancel culture, whether it's being deplatformed off a social media channel or even being excluded from your own social circle of friends. That's where we're at. And these, this invention of words, intersectionality. You know what I'd love? Here's my idea of intersectionality. Why don't we send Joy Reid on a bicycle in her summer ensemble to the intersection of Portage and Maine in Winnipeg in January? That would be my kind of reality show. I mean, give me a break. It's so much mumbo jumbo, and people are nodding their head in agreement, I think, Andrew, to concepts that they don't even understand.
Well, for people who don't know who Joy Reid exactly is, somehow she got a promotion to have her own show when she was caught with old anti-gay blogs that she used to write, very much like Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks used to write blogs about, like, fantasizing about rape. But Joy Reid's old blogs, for some reason everybody used to have a blog, were about anti-gay stereotypes, and then she claimed it wasn't her who wrote them on her own blog. And it was hacked, that old story. My account was hacked, and then somehow she got a promotion out of it. So that's who Joy Reid is. And I want to transition your statement of people just saying, no comment, or I don't want to comment on this, because in a video you came out with the other day with a young, marvelous Turkish superstar, Mocha,
yes.
Somebody drives by the people cleaning up one of the homeless encampments and yells at these black guys saying that white people are doing this, and the black guys laugh at them and point at their skin like, what are you talking about? But when you come up and ask them what was said, they're like, oh, no comment, or they just say anything, oh, it's fine, sir. It's like, you're so afraid.
Yeah, these were three black guys.
Yeah, you can't, you're so, something so obviously stupid happened to you where the other person was obviously wrong, and you're just like, oh no, I can't give a comment on that, because what, you're going to get fired by the city?
Yeah.
You're cleaning up a homeless encampment, which is David Menzies, sounds like his year-long project that he's been following. I know Mocha's been tracking these. But you got some blowback, I hear.
It was unbelievable. I mean, here is some social justice warrior, presumably in his mom's Lincoln, driving south on Bathurst, yelling at these three obvious black gentlemen who are part of a security company, helping the cops clean up and maintain order against the Antifa types, being labeled, I don't know, some form of white supremacist. And you're right, when I went up to them and I said, what do you feel about that comment? They clammed up, and which is sad, because what they should have done is joked about it like they were to the cops, which we caught them on film. Although one, he put his mask on, but I could tell under his mask he was laughing. So good on him.
I want to see if there's any super chats, hyper chats down with YouTube. Hyper chats from anyone who thinks that the park should not be cleared out, because I know some people think that. Some people in our company were sharing comments and photos of people disagreeing with that. And to that, I would have to turn over to my co-host David Menzies to tell them. I mean, I'll say the part where if you are a drug addict, you can get help. There's plenty of help in Canada. That's the thing. There's so many social services in Canada that I don't understand how anyone who's not insane can't get welfare. You can, if you go to a place like Oshawa, there's 55 rent-controlled apartment buildings where you can pay $150 a month and get welfare at the same time.
Yep.
And as you say, there's how many places available in homeless shelters?
6,000 shelter spaces. And in case you think these are horrible places to reside, some of these shelter
Opposed
spaces...
to a park.
Yeah, some of these shelter spaces, Andrew, are hotels, like 3-4-star hotels that the city is leasing to deal with the homeless situation. How is that, an affront to someone's freedom? Because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, regardless of your circumstances, you simply do not have the right to camp out overnight.
Because then everyone can do it.
Yeah, in a public park.
Oh, Justin, let's please cue up the part of the video where the guy drinking has a conversation with David Menzies.
Oh, the Maple Leaf guy.
Yeah, there's a guy drinking...
I think we should give him a show.
There's a guy drinking cold shots at the park, which is the tiny cans of extra alcohol content, tiny beers. So either you're 18 and drinking those, or you're an alcoholic. And he's yelling at David Menzies for reporting on this, not making
No. I was across the street, and he welcomed me over to get an interview. I didn't infringe upon his privacy, and I just acquiesced to what he said. Yeah, so
typical Leafs fan. Just kidding, I'm a Leafs fan. He's no Dart Guy. Do you know that guy?
Oh yeah, I
Dart Guy's got his own radio show, doesn't he?
Oh well, why? Listen, what's on local radio in Toronto right now, Andrew? I got to tell you, if some of these cats don't get off the air, I'm going to stop breathing it. Okay.
Well, I believe he's also an OHL scout. Not to get too inside here.
Oh, okay then.
He's got actual inside knowledge, but maybe he should have Cold Shot Guy on. Dart Guy and Cold Shot.
All right. Well, let's show Cold Shot Guy, and if you folks think he's worthy of his own show or segment or regular appearance, so be it.
Hey, come over here and get closer. Too far away. And right here beside me. Not you. Yeah, Rebel News. Not bad.
Okay. So you called me over, sir, and
you ever find a rebel yet?
Oh, how do you mean?
A rebel. You know what a rebel is?
I think so, but in what context are you
you
talking?
explain it to me because I don't know. I'm an uneducated guy.
Okay.
Let's hear your side.
You called me over here.
I called you over?
Well, you just did a second ago. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. Yeah, I did.
And so did you want to weigh in on this homeless encampment?
Weigh in on what?
On the homeless encampment being disassembled. Yeah. Were you a resident of the encampment, sir?
I'm entitled to my own own opinion, but I'm not going to share it with you.
Oh, okay, then why'd you call me over?
Why did I call you over?
Yeah.
I like your suit.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
But I don't like you.
Okay, well, you know what? That's the beauty of the society we are in.
So I need a suit. I got to go to a special function. Can I borrow that?
Oh, yeah. What's the function?
Never mind. I don't have to tell you that.
Well, you brought it up.
It's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. How old?
Every day of the week, every day of the year.
Happy birthday, sir. How old are you turning?
Who, me?
Yes.
Holy
No, somebody else.
Not bad. Not bad.
Are you old enough to drink alcohol legally now?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No.
No? Oh, okay. All right, well.
No, never.
19, I'm sure, is just around the corner.
19? Yeah.
Okay, then.
When I hit puberty, I'll let you know.
Please,
You'll be the first one I call.
Please, I scare easy. Yes.
That's your life.
How about those Leafs? What do you make of their season this year? Yeah, you're wearing a Leaf shirt.
I'm wearing the shirt, I'll tell you why.
Okay.
It's 100% cotton. I like that.
Okay, then. All right, then.
It's clean, too.
Okay.
You like the color? Who the cares what you like? See you later.
Okay, thank you. Really? Who cares what I like? You know, I'll tell you, he doesn't like me. He said it himself, Andrew, but I really like him for some reason.
Cold Shot Guy. Let's get him.
Yeah, Cold Shot Guy. He seems to be a very deep thinker. Also, I mean, remember, he called me over from the other side of the street, and when I asked a question, his question of, who, me? I had to resist saying, no, the tree behind you is who I'm trying to interview. But I think he is a resident of that tent city, and he didn't look too bad. He didn't look too worse for wear. He had a brand new 100% cotton Toronto Maple Leaf shirt. Looks like the real deal. I can't afford those.
I mean, he's getting wasted on the middle of a Tuesday afternoon across the street from a park, so he can't be having too much of a rough go.
You know, what function would a homeless man be going to? I mean, like, you know,
I don't think he's
is there
homeless.
like TrampCon coming to Toronto or something?
David, you're being too insensitive. We should let them live in the park where you've been bitten by dogs, where you've been attacked by people.
Yes, that's true.
I'm pulling out my phone because we've got a couple chats in here.
Oh, fantastic.
A tip of $20 from Annalisa S.
Oh, thank you, Annalisa. She's so generous. Thank you, Annalisa.
Your ball of David Menzies' hair is in the mail. From Rumble, daughter of Narcissus, interesting name. What about critical beard theory, where babies cry when dad shaves off his beard? Of course, babies prefer what they know. Doesn't mean babies are beardist. That's a good anagram or something. Oh. Anagram's not what that is. But from Super You, Mog. It says babies show preference to what they see all the time. It has nothing to do with race. That's exactly what I was saying. Ryan Rosty says, could listen to that guy for hours. I'm guessing he's thinking of Cold Shot Guy there. We need to get Cold Shot Guy. We need you. Andrew says at rebelnews.com. I think just David at rebelnews.com is the email.
What do we have in the budget to pay Cold Shot Guy?
6 cases of cold shots.
You know what?
They come in 4-packs. They come in 4-packs because they're so strong.
Oh, well, you know what? I would precede that, Andrew, with the phrase, don't ask me how I know this, but...
I was once 17. That's how I know this. Devil's Advocate says, David just attracts the winners, doesn't he? You really do.
Just like in high school.
Dog biters, alcoholics.
Yeah, you know what? I seem to be a chaos magnet for some reason, Andrew. I try to be friendly and civil, have people dropping F-bombs on me, sicking dogs, throwing things at me. And come on, I'm the lovable one, don't you think?
Before we run out of time, let's pull up the Rebel News store.
Yes.
At rebelnewsstore.com, because there are new shirts dropping all the time, and I like them, especially if we go to the new collection. Justin, the producer, who's having trouble finding our website right now, it seems like, rebelnewsstore.com. There he goes. These new designs here, I really like. If we keep going down, yes, I like the 1984 one there. The Back to the Future one I've got in the mail right now.
Wow, look at you.
Thanks, David. So there's so many new things dropping all the time.
I love Woka Coke.
I'm a big fan of soda shirts, so maybe I'll get that one too. Yeah. If you want a discount of 10% off, it's Andrew 10 at checkout, or you can choose David 10s, but that one won't work. It'll give you actually $10
look at that.
That's David Menzies' real body, I've been told. That's not Triple H.
Not exactly as advertised. But at this point, Andrew, I want to say that the offer is still on the table. And this is not company money. It's my own dough. First person I see wearing the Menzoid t-shirt in public, you're going to get a nice, crisp $100 bill courtesy of me for my gratitude that you would wear something with my likeness on it, albeit a likeness not exactly as advertised.
Which racist is on the $100 bill?
Isn't it Borden?
I don't know.
Or is that the $50 bill?
Shout out to CFB Borden, terrible base in Ontario. Just terrible place to be at any time.
You used to be a soldier, didn't you?
I did, some
Thank you
might
for your
say.
service.
Thank you for your service of whatever it is you're doing these days.
What did you do in the Army?
Do we have to talk about this?
Peel potatoes?
Yeah. I was on the show MASH is basically what I did in the Army.
Oh, you were Radar O'Reilly, I guess, right?
I don't know who that is.
Well,
somebody's running for office, which is
Yes.
something I encourage Sheila Gunn-Reid to do all the time. I say, Sheila, run in small town Alberta, you'll win.
She will win.
Exactly, that's the point. And then just do one term, I don't know, is it 6 years if she's an MP or an MPP? Just, rustle feathers as much as you can, but I can't convince her to do it. She has this thing where she doesn't like the government,
Well, you know what? Mm-hmm. She'd be an amazing agent for change within the government. And that's the thing. We need people exactly like Sheila Gunn-Reid.
Exactly.
Andrew, too. We've had all kinds of crazy leftists and progressives and Marxists and socialists invade government. Even people that are conservative in name only getting involved with conservative parties and progressive conservative parties.
Everyone but Derek Sloan.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. So much for the big tent, right? Aaron O'Toole. Oh, yeah. It's a big tent. Oh, you're a social conservative.
It's a huge tent.
Boy Scout walkout.
It's the biggest tent you've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's people exactly like Sheila Gunn Reid to get onto some kind of lever of power that is needed.
Producer Efron wants you to run.
You know what? I think I would do myself in on day one by just simply honestly answering a question and using impolite...
Why don't you run for mayor of Toronto?
Oh, well, wouldn't that be lovely? You know what? Maybe I should run for something as a social experiment but here's the problem.
You could get in that top 5 or whatever it is that gets you on the debate stage, I think.
What if, like, Jesse the Body Ventura, when he ran for governor and actually won, right, which nobody expected at the time.
Mayor Kane?
Yeah, but what if I win? I mean, then I would have to leave Rebel News. I can't.
I think what you're supposed to do if you win is you start a show about conspiracy theories like Jesse Ventura, where you demand to be let into every facility. I'm a former governor. I was a Navy SEAL, David. Why can't I go in? And then you can be the guy going to like the military bases, demanding you get in because you held office.
That's going to work really well.
It's a show on Sci-Fi or something you can have. Maybe an A&E show. Go gain 600 pounds. You'll be on 600 Pound Life.
Oh, you know what? If I don't get on my bike today, that might happen sometime soon. But so what is the story with the PPC candidate?
Yeah, we want to mention Viva Frey, I believe it's pronounced, a fellow Frenchman like myself, even though I'm not practicing. He's running in some sort of jurisdiction in Quebec as a member of the PPC. He's a good guy from what I've seen from him. We've had interactions with him. I believe Ezra was on Michaela Peterson's podcast with him. So he's sort of, if you like Rebel News or Ezra Levant, you're probably going to be on his side policy-wise. So he's running as a PPC candidate. I think the idea here is we wish him all the best because it's not very often that people, I like to point out the anti-lockdown groups. What have they actually done? Have they changed any policy? Have they gone and done this mass non-compliance that they said they're going to do? No. Maybe somebody should run for office. Maybe Rob Carbone should run for prime minister. He's a billionaire.
He's the head of the Republican Party, I understand.
The party that doesn't exist. He's a billionaire.
Wait, it's not been registered yet?
Not the last time I checked.
Oh, jeez. Well, that's a problem.
Rob Carbone, come on the David Menzies show and tell us how you made your billions, by the way.
There's no such thing as the David Menzies show.
There will be now. You'll have a fake show just like he has a fake website. And you'll just be standing in front of the green screen. But I digress on that. Justin, do we have more hyper chats that I can get to?
Yes, we do.
Of course we do. Of course we do. It better be...
Lots to talk about.
It better be about the homeless encampment, David Menzies.
Well, we have free speech here, so they'll talk about what they darn well please to
Devil's Advocate, oh no, we read that one where David attracts the winners. Daughter of Narcissus again says, David Menzies is like Detective Columbo, disarmingly well-mannered, then bam, tough question. Now I want to see, I'm guessing people notice you have a new hat that you're wearing.
Yes.
So I want to see Superstar Mocha dressed in a suit wearing a hat, and you dressed in a suit wearing another hat, some sort of detective-like sketch for these homeless encampments. That's a good idea, I think, that you should write down.
But you know what? I think that was a very insightful comment because, first of all, back in the day when, I think, was it the ABC Weekly Mysteries? Columbo was, there was Macmillan and Wife and so on and so forth. Columbo was the 5-coupon ride of that series. And the whole idea of Columbo, Detective Columbo, he had the frumpy raincoat. He drove a piece of junk French imported vehicle. And he came across looking, like he was in a haze. And that's when the people he's investigating let their guard down and say something they probably shouldn't have said because they just assume he's a dimwit. And his famous line is, "Oh, just one more thing," which is what I always say when I'm being escorted out by security. Get that final question in, the killer question. So
Can I ask
to be
you a few
compared to
questions?
Detective Columbo, that's a compliment.
And Tolly says on Subaru, it's funny how only conservatives are kicked out of the Conservative Party. Well, when you're Aaron O'Toole and you're Doug Ford and you don't really stand for anything at all other than, nothing, I guess. I tried to come up with something there. Aaron O'Toole says he's against censorship, but didn't say anything when, like, Trump was kicked off of 17 other things. Oh, it's not in that country.
Oh, wait a minute. Andrew, you mentioned to the audience that you've already ordered the DeLorean
Yes.
T-shirt. Well, if we got into a DeLorean with a flux capacitor and went back in time to July 2020, Mr. O'Toole was pro-free speech and anti-cancel culture. He said it at our own event. And we go 1 year into, well, it wasn't even 1 year, it was within months of becoming leader, suddenly pro-cancel culture, anti-free speech. This is a disaster, and I'll tell you this, I know we have to go soon. I don't want this to happen, but I think it's going to happen. I think the Conservatives are going to get slaughtered in the next election. I believe Ezra did some math. He can see another 20 seats being lost by the Conservative Party, and it is because of this kind of crap coming out of Aaron O'Toole's mouth, saying one thing that appealed to Conservatives when he was vying for the leadership, getting the leadership, doing another thing, courting the mainstream media, the mean girls in the party. Whose strategy was this? Oh yeah, Andrew Scheer. How did that work for you, Conservative Party of Canada?
I'm voting for that guy John with the Hitler mustache. Allegedly.
Do we have a photo of him?
I think somewhere we've got to. I don't know, but if we can come up with that in a minute, fine. But he says 12 years ago he dressed up as Charlie Chaplin. Not sure why he took the picture of himself with his shirt off. One of the pictures says Heil John, or one of the comments, sorry. It wasn't a new comment, it was an old comment. I really don't care. I mean, I'm not going to I don't care if the guy's lying or telling the truth. It's just a funny story. And his name's John. If you're voting for a guy named John, then there's a problem already.
Sounds like one of the Waltons, or was that John Boy? Folks, I'm going to give you some advice. If you're a male and you want to grow a mustache, post Charlie Chaplin and Adolf Hitler. Don't do the rectangle, or it's not, what are they?
Square.
The square, or is it a rectangle? I'm sorry, I'm a grade 11 math dropout. Don't do that linear, it looks like a piece of duct tape under your nose.
Menzies is like Ricky from Trailer Park Boys. He just got his grade 10.
Or better yet, just don't grow a mustache. Don't.
Well, there was that Michael Jordan commercial where he had the same mustache, if you recall.
That's right. It's going to be trouble. I'm just saying that.
I think producer Justin's had enough of us. Before we go, I want to ask you if you watched the show Kung Fu when it was out.
Oh, I sure did.
Of course. What about Kung Fu: The Legend Continues?
Oh, is this where it's a woke Kung Fu?
No, that was when he had the little kid and he was just helping him go through life.
Oh, okay, because I heard there's a new Kung Fu, and I think the protagonist is female, of course, because you have to reinvent all
because I believe the wife of Bruce Lee, who claimed that it was the idea was stolen from them, which it actually wasn't. She's coming out with a new version of it.
Oh, okay, because it was David Carradine that played the title role, who is no longer
with us.
Yes.
Quentin Tarantino says Bruce Lee's wife is a liar. So we'll end on that. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for putting up with us. David Menzies, last words as you always want.
As always, stay sane.